Hello fellow creature, welcome back to Rooftop Talks. It's expensive to breed thousands of animals, keep them in a shelter has a roof over their head, right? And to feed animals up to a point where they're fully sized and then to slaughter them. This is an expensive process. They have to be fed a lot of food and supplements to get them to that size. This is an expensive process. So why is it that animal products are so affordable, at least comparatively speaking, in the price that you pay in the supermarket compared to plants? The reason is because the animal agricultural industry got off to a head start. The industry really started to ramp up in the First World War, where the government stepped in. Animal-based products was seen as a real luxury. You know, we want to give our troops the very best, so we're going to put sausages and bully beef, corned beef, and we're going to send that to the front line. And that was how the agricultural industry got their foot in the door. And ever since then, they've played many dirty tricks to keep that power and control over the food industry, particularly. I mean, there are other industries we can talk about, which we do talk about on this channel, but for the food industry in particular. And nowadays, when we realize that there are some very deep problems with the animal agricultural industry, for one thing, they enslave animals, which runs contrary to our values as compassionate human beings. The fact that we in the 21st century exist with a slave class that are simply non-human, but they are a slave class that are routinely abused for our enjoyment and amusement. That's not a good thing. The animal agricultural industry has ways to prevent any change back into a plant-based system. Well, for one thing, they have powerful lobby groups, which means they get to change the rules. They get to influence the rules on which everyone plays. So what do? They tax vegan alternatives. They create censorship laws. Yes, they impede on your freedom of speech to prevent vegan brands from using certain words and names in their products, right? Which is what creates these ridiculous names that are born out of legal necessity. You're not allowed to call a certain thing a sausage or a burger or something, right? This is the conservative side, by the way, that is pushing for these infringements of free speech. But they get to write the rules when it comes to the language we're allowed to use. They get to affect tax policy, what gets taxed and what gets subsidized. And this is where we really answer the question. All of those animal-based products that you're seeing in the supermarket, they're heavily subsidized by government intervention. It's not a free market when you're looking at the animal industry, because lobby groups pay to influence the government to write the rules that makes it so that animal-based products are artificially kept low, even though the cost to a people is so high. And then they create and perpetuate these loops that keep a population trapped and dependent on animal products. So they will reinforce the lie that vegan products are super expensive. They'll point to some random arbitrary vegan luxury products and they'll say, look at how expensive that is. I can't afford to pay that. Some kind of luxury vegan product, which of course exists. And they say, I can't afford to pay that. Look at how expensive vegan food is. And they selectively choose what to look at. They don't look at the vegetable section of a supermarket, right? They look at the luxury brands. They look at new up-and-coming brands that are priced at a premium. And they love this narrative. They love perpetuating the narrative that veganism is expensive, despite the fact that there are many studies that prove the contrary. Even with these unfair advantages that the animal agricultural industry has, it's still more affordable to be vegan in the UK. I know that much. And so they perpetuate this idea that veganism is expensive, so then people don't go out and buy as many vegan products, which then reinforces the high prices because these vegan companies that create vegan products need to charge higher prices because they're getting less customers. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's a negative spiral, okay? And there are many of these and they perpetuate them. They love perpetuating these negative spirals. They want to reinforce this notion that you can't go vegan. It's a lie, but that's what they want you to believe. Because when you believe that, they profit. They get to keep things the same. They don't have to change to match the times that we're living in. They don't have to change to liberate animals. Now, I'm always very hesitant to talk about subsidies, to talk about these dirty tricks that the animal agricultural industry uses. Tax incentives, subsidies, tax punishments for vegan products, hampering of free speech when it comes to describing vegan products. I'm always hesitant to talk about them because I know that the unintended effect of this is that certain vegans become disheartened. They become discouraged. They think that it's impossible to change. And I don't want vegans to feel that way. But I also don't want vegans to be delusional. I want them to be realistic about the challenges we face. I think a film that every vegan needs to see is an old film called 12 Angry Men. And it shows how one person can change everything. Not a group, not an organization, one person with a seat at the table can change everything. Now, it's set in a room where the jury are deciding whether this young man should be guilty of murder and face the death penalty. They've heard the evidence presented in the court, and some of them there, they really hate this guy. Others of them are kind of impartial. They don't really care. They just want to go home, right? They just want to go and watch the baseball game or whatever. So they don't want to be cooped up in this room all the time. And so they immediately do a show of hands. Who thinks he's guilty? And everyone raises their hands, except for one. There's one person in the room who doesn't raise their hand. And it's the Henry Fonda character. What's the immediate reaction? They're all furious at this guy. They can't understand why this guy won't raise his hand. And by the way, it has to be a unanimous vote. So everyone has to vote yes for them to pass that sentence. And he just won't raise his hand. Despite what seems like insurmountable odds and evidence. He just says, I just don't think it's right. There's something not right about this case. Even for him at first, it's not really like a fully formed idea. It's just a feeling, like it's a very small feeling.
I don't have anything brilliant. I only know as much as you do. According to testimony, the boy looks guilty. Maybe he is. I sat there in court for 6 days listening while the evidence built up. Everybody sounded so positive. You know, I began to get a peculiar feeling about this trial. I mean, nothing is that positive. There are a lot of questions I'd have liked to ask. I don't know, maybe they wouldn't have meant anything, but I began to get the feeling that the defense counsel wasn't conducting a thorough enough cross-examination. I mean, he let too many things go by, little things that...
What little things? Listen, when these fellows don't ask questions, it's because they know the answers already and they figure they'll be hurt.
Maybe it's also possible for a lawyer to be just plain stupid, isn't it? I mean, it's possible.
You sound like you met my brother-in-law once.
I kept putting myself in the kid's place. I'd have asked for another lawyer, I think. I mean, if I was on trial for my life, I'd want my lawyer to tear the prosecution witnesses to shreds, or at least try to.
But he manages to explain his idea, and something remarkable happens. One by one, very gradually, it starts with just one other. He starts to change their minds. And he, just through persistent explanation and compelling reasoning, he starts to prove his counter-argument, which is the argument of reasonable doubt. And that's where it changes from the vegan argument. You know, this is an argument about reasonable doubt in the court of law. They are more arguing over the facts about what happened on that night where the man was killed, right? With us, it's not so much about reasonable doubt, but it's a moral argument. So instead of it being what factually happens, we already have that. We already know what factually happens inside a slaughterhouse on a farm. We know the facts. Most people do, at least. They have some concept of what happens. That they don't choose to think about it a lot, but they know. So we've already won the realm of facts. We're now in the argument of morality. What should we do? The oughts. What ought we to do with this knowledge, with this reality? That's where the vegan argument lies, in what we do next, how we move from here. Anyway, it's an incredibly inspiring story because it shows how one individual who is just determined, just a stick in the mud, and appeals to their better nature in many times, reinforces good behavior, good moral behavior, is able to one by one sway people. And another important observation is these are people, he swayed people who never, in the beginning, would never have contemplated that they could in fact be swayed. They didn't even know within themselves that they had the potential to be swayed by anything he could say.
Why were you rubbing your nose like that?
Well, if it's any of your business, I was rubbing it because it bothers me a little.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is it because of your eyeglasses?
It is. Now, could we get on to something else?
Your eyeglasses made those two deep impressions in the sides of your nose. I hadn't noticed that before. That must be annoying.
It is very annoying.
Oh, I wouldn't know about that. I've never worn eyeglasses. 2020.
Listen, will you come on already with the optometrist bit?
The woman who testified that she saw the killing had those same marks on the sides of her nose.
Holy smokes, you know he's right.
Just give me...
These were people who were very confident in their verdict. There's a range of different characters in 12 Angry Men. This is another reason why I love it. A range of different types of character, and of course the last one to change represents like the anti-vegan, right? This is someone who have actually an emotional knot, an unresolved argument within their own personal lives that just prevented them, even when it was very clear that reasonable doubt should be applied. Just wouldn't let go until he finally broke. And this is something that pessimists, and there are many pessimists in the vegan movement, this is something that pessimists are reluctant to admit, that one person really can change the whole world. And history has proven this many times. There are many cases in history of really it being an individual choosing to persist through adversity to reach a certain conclusion. It happens often. You can think of some right now, for better or for worse. There are also cases where one leader of a certain nation just refuses to die, refuses to let go of power, and they change the course of history as a result, in a bad way, more often than not. So that is really something I recommend you watch if you're a vegan and you're pessimistic. I'm not saying that it will be easy. I'm saying that it's possible, and that we should really strive to get to that possibility, that eventuality, and bring it about sooner rather than later. And we can do it while frowning, or we can do it while smiling, you know? And I'd rather do it with some kind of light on in the room, you know, a light within our hearts, you know, and try and be happy as we're doing it, because this is our lives that we're spending doing this. The task ahead is monumental. I'm not going to pretend like it isn't. It's probably one that will last multiple generations, if I'm honest. But it is inevitable. And so I think confronting the darkness within us, the fact that we live in a time of slavery, an era of slavery, the enslavement of animals, especially farm animals, that is a dark corner of our society and of our culture that will have to be confronted at some point, and we can accelerate that change. It lurks there always, and it's uncomfortable. And it's something that needs addressing, and it will be addressed at a certain point. We can push it to the agenda to be talked about, to be discussed, and we can argue that it should be eradicated, that animals should be liberated, that they should be freed from the tyranny of humankind. The slaughterhouses are there, the pigs are there, the cows are there, cowering. They suffer in torment, and they wait because there's nothing to do but wait when you're a slave. They wait for humans to wake up to their monstrous behavior. They wait for us. Let's not keep them waiting.